everyone.
Hello again. In the chapter, Development of the Organization Structure, they've been spending some pages now on the different minds they have had over the many decades, 6 generations, about elders. And it's interesting that you get buried in the first period here. You get buried in a change that has obviously been identified by people like James Penton and Ray Franz and David Reed as another flip-flop, that they've actually moved their position on elders 3 times. Triple flip-flop.
Yeah.
And this is the first of them. It happened in the 1890s. But now they have a box on page 207 where they ask why the change, why the Russell change. You need to know the date, though. Remember, this is 1906 now, so about 11 years has gone by since they actually started to change the elder arrangement. What's happened in those 11 years? This is past the date when the 6th volume of the Studies in the Scriptures had been released. The idea is formed in most of the Russellites' mind that they are Russellites indeed, that Charles Taze Russell is personally the faithful and wise servant. So a lot of these explanations here, if you know that backdrop, make more sense, because it looks like there's a consolidation of power going on here in the local congregations to make them more loyal and faithful to Russell's agenda, right? And that consolidation of power is wrapped in the cloak of humility. And I think we're going to see humility oozing out of these paragraphs. So let's read them first, and then no doubt something to say.
Okay. Why the change? When questioned on his change of view regarding selection of elders in the various groups of the Lord's people, C.T. Russell replied, and this is a quote from March 15, 1906, Zion's Watchtower. First of all, I hasten to assure you that I have never laid claim to infallibility. We do not deny growing in knowledge, and that we now see in a slightly different light the will of the Lord respecting elders or leaders in the various little groups of his people. Our error in judgment was in expecting too much of the dear brothers, who, coming early into the truth, became the natural leaders of these little companies. The ideal view of them, which we fondly entertained, was that the knowledge of the truth would have upon them a very humbling effect, causing them to appreciate their own insignificance, and that whatever they knew and were able to present to others was as mouthpieces of God, and because used of him. Our ideal hopes were that these would, in every sense of the word, be examples to the flock, and that should the Lord's providence bring into the little company one or more equally competent, or more competent to present the truth, that the spirit of love would lead them in honor to prefer one another, and thus to help and urge one another to participate in the service of the church, the body of Christ. With this thought in mind, we concluded that the larger measures of grace and truth now due and appreciated by the Lord's consecrated people would make it unnecessary for them to follow the course outlined by the apostles in the early church. Our mistake was in failing to realize that the arrangements outlined by the apostles under divine supervision are superior to anything that others could formulate, and that the church as a whole will need to have the regulations instituted by the apostles until, by our change in the resurrection, we shall all be made complete and perfect and be directly in association with the Master. Our mistake gradually dawned upon us as we beheld amongst dear brethren, to some extent, the spirit of rivalry, and on the part of many a desire to hold the leadership of meetings as an office instead of as a service, and to exclude and hinder from developing as leaders other brethren of equal ability naturally, and of equal knowledge of the truth and competency in wielding the sword of the Spirit. End of quote.
So, reading between the lines, which we have to do here at this distance of 120 years almost, what's going on in the organization? Well, it wasn't called an organization, it was an association of brothers, but it's very obvious from this that something's going wrong in a lot of these companies, then called what we now call congregations. What's going wrong? Well, obviously, Russell's teachings have been exalted to the point, he's the only author here, after all, the Watchtower's publishing his books. He's been exalted to the point where any challenge to his authority at this point is a danger, and obviously happening all over the place. And he's talking endlessly here about being humble, but who's he beseeching to become more humble? The original leaders who should make room for the people. What people? People who are more loyal to Russell? That's kind of left unsaid here. What's the challenge then? It's coming from the original leaders who are proud is plainly what this is saying.
I think it's interesting that you hear over and over again in this little piece here the truth, and they've even got truth capitalized. So you've already got that phrase being the phrase that I remember when I was a witness. You were in the truth. You've excluded everybody outside of your group.
Your group, yeah, that's exactly right. And your group obviously is troubled now by people who, whether they have reservations about Russell, we don't know from this, but we know from other information that there were a lot of reservations about the now official teaching that was among the brothers, that Russell was the faithful and wise servant in his own person. It was no longer a collective. So that is one of the facts that is undoubted about this entire period up to 1906. But what really jumped out at me was, we used to believe, he's admitting, that what we had, the way we were organized, was better than what the apostles were doing. Now we've realized, it's dawned on us, it says in the last paragraph, that no, they were their way of doing it was superior. What would give you the hubris to think that you would know better how to organize the Lord's people, the bride of Christ?
It was unnecessary for them. I think we read somewhere before in the readings that the time factor was always largely on their mind. So looming in their head was, oh well, we don't have time to get that organized.
It's all over by 1914. We'll all be in heaven by then, and that's plainly there in this idea of we'll know better when the resurrection occurs, and that's any day now.
But even the fact that he started by saying, we now see in a slightly different light. It's an opposite. It's not a variant on the same thing. They've changed their mind. They've completely changed their mind.
Now, this box is embedded in a section of the book on the development of the organized structure. And then you realize, well, they cut off the discussion after Russell.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's moving to the preaching work in the next part of the chapter. And you realize there's a design there, which is you only have to think for a moment about what happens in the next decade after Russell dies, and what the insistence is from the mid-20s onward that he's not the faithful servant, and Rutherford trying to take more control of the Russellite congregations that still exist, really ushering out the elders that had been made elders during this very period, and replacing them with his own plants, that is, his own organization men, because now it's two organizations. There's God's organization and there's Satan's. And anyone who resists God's organization, meaning Rutherford, is to be, well, not forcefully expelled, but they're severely discouraged from having any leadership position in the local congregation.
So I don't know. I think they're kind of counting on you not realizing that they abandoned this new light, and then got it back again in 70s.
Yeah.
And for a lot of witnesses, either they're very old and won't remember, or they're new and they don't know that there was ever a change in the arrangement.
Yeah, and like you just indicated, that length of time. Rutherford starts the movement to get rid of this Russellite structure in the mid-20s. Russell is thrown out as a faithful slave in 1927. His books are no longer being distributed. So from 1927 onwards until 1972, you're again back to the way you originally were when Russell started this organization. Basically, his men in control of every congregation. When I came in 1970-71, one congregation servant. A year later, multiple elders. He's just one among the many. And that has been, of course, the case now for over 50 years. But you don't know that if you're reading this very superficially. It's always presented as, well, God's light came, and we were humble enough to change with the new light.
Yeah, one other thing is them calling, well, Russell called himself a mouthpiece of God, but he's also calling them mouthpieces of God. But before he said, I don't claim to be infallible. But he does call himself a mouthpiece of God. And who in Scripture are mouthpieces of God?
Inspired men.
And prophets.
Yeah.
They can speak for God because God is telling them what to say. You are just, making up things as you go. Your understanding, your thinking. God has not picked you and given you his words to put, when it talks about the prophets, it says he puts his words in their mouth. Well, obviously that's not true of Russell or the Jehovah's Witnesses, because
they're still playing this card, though, aren't they, today? That we're not infallible, we never claim to be inspired, but you better
you have to listen
attach
to
yourself
us
to us, or you will not survive.
Yeah.
This has not essentially changed since the days of Russell.
No.
Our link is, I think, along that line that you just developed.
Oh, okay. Yes, the link is Russell humbly admits he's God's mouthpiece. Exclusive truth claims evidence of pride, not modesty.
Yeah, check this video out. It was another earlier, I think we did it about a year ago, from the Proclaimer's book.
The Proclaimer's book, yeah.
His humility is stressed in this book throughout.
Yeah.
And yet you will never get the impression from his own writings in that period that he was a humble man. But he's always using humility as a stick to beat people with. You should be more humble. That hasn't changed either.
Yeah.
And there's another video. We won't put this on, but go looking for it in the Have Jehovah's Witnesses Ever Been God's Organization playlist. And there's another video where we talk about his being called in the Finished Mystery the voice of Jehovah.
Yeah.
Now, where did you ever get the impression he was the voice of Jehovah? Well, it could be the statement that's in the other video. Check it out.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Bye.